So one of the nice things about Premiere, though, is like this particular project, I showed you the broadcast version on Wednesday, but it's also got, there are various sizes for it. So it's the 1920 by 1080 for broadcast. There's a, this one is a 1080 by 1920 for Facebook stories. And then there's a 1080 square version as well. But then they all exist, all of those elements exist in 30 and 15-second versions, and at the last second, a 5-second version. So, you know, I mean, what's typical within a, you know, if I like a project like this is that you have to create, might have to create a video, but usually you need to create a social media version of it as well, at least one or another. So, and, you know, my project window has all of my stuff in it organized, and this actually has a dynamic link with After Effects. There's actually, this graphic is an After Effects graphic and whatnot. But I really just use Premiere to assemble the video portions, and then put, you know, and then also I'll go into After Effects, do the After Effects like the supers, like this stuff with you know, free parking and those kinds of things will all be done in After Effects and brought in, and then the whole thing renders. They just render like another piece of footage, you know, with transparent backgrounds. So this is a 30. You know, this is a 15 of the same thing. 1080 square version. And actually, I cheat on my stories. Usually I'll just create the 1080 version, 1080 square version, and then like I did here, I'll just plunk it in the middle of a 1080, or a story version, a 1080 by 1920, and I'll header and footer the graphic. I used to always try to recrop, but the size difference is so big from everything else that it's just got to be rather, A, time consuming, B, I'd always run into issues with resolution on a piece of footage or another. So when I started after a bit, I just started taking the 1080 version that I had, putting it in the middle of the story format, and placing, like in this case, I place a web address at the top and the Cleveland Auto Show at the bottom, so that, you know, as it plays through, it's always got those items. So it saved time and headache, really. So, and like in this particular case, I didn't get the final approval on everything until Thursday night, and he needed all the versions of them on Friday. So again, another reason to cut a corner and kind of make things go a little bit quicker. But you know, what's nice is, you know, I had one composition, I duplicate it, give it a new name, and I change the format of it and just adjust the positioning of stuff. You know, it's like an ad resize. If you ever had to do an ad resize or an illustration resize or something for different purpose, it's kind of similar, all in all. So, but, you know, I keep everything organized. All my video footage is in one folder. Graphics usually are just like PSD stills and Illustrator stills, something for logos and that kind of stuff. My audio goes in a folder. And then here's all the different sizes, all my different compositions for the piece. So we're not going to do anything this involved, really, but, you know, just so you can see, there are, you know, in a typical project, there can be a lot of parts, a lot of variations, and that's where becoming organized, keeping things structured, really starts to pay off. I've got one video, I can hunt and peck around, I guess, but when I got to do, you know, was it 4 sizes of, you know, so I got 8 total videos to do, keeping stuff organized is important. The second thing is that, you know, if you do more motion graphics, I mean, you get a job or an internship in a video place, you know, video house or whatever, they're looking for organized files. Not taking the time to organize stuff is a sure way to not get asked to do another project or not asked back, in an internship or whatever. The problem is that a lot of times somebody else might need to pick up your file and work on it. Or next year comes around and maybe you're not there anymore and somebody else needs to pick it up. They need to be able to work on it. They need to be able to find stuff. So organizing things is really kind of paramount. And the same thing goes for Photoshop, and it goes for Illustrator and InDesign and everything. I mean, you've heard it from everybody, but it really, really, really is true. And so let's get in the habit of organizing stuff early so that we can find stuff, and that's part of the grading anyway. I always look for screenshots of your workspace to see that things are organized. But keeping them organized it's just a good habit to get into. So the problem is you leave stuff in your downloads folder. You download a piece of video, leave it in your downloads folder, and you get a bug up your butt and decide to clean out your downloads folder one day, and you throw that footage away and you're lost. So start organizing early, and it's not ever going to be a problem. All right? So, but this is, how a typical file can come together. So, just so you kind of get a sense, that's a fairly common kind of thing, kind of structure. All right? So, having done that, and these files get kind of big too. You try to play them back. So there is, within this workspace, actually if I grab the, let's see. If I grab my 30-second spot and try to play it through at full resolution, where everything is perfectly crisp. See how the playback is really kind of jumpy, not working out real well. That too, yeah. So the footage is off, the audio is distorted, that kind of thing. That's simply a preview sort of thing. And you can fix that within the interface here so that whenever you're previewing, you get a good sense for whether things are where they're supposed to be or whether they're not. And the easiest way to do that is here within our window, our project window, or our workspace, the video window, there is, here in the lower right-hand corner, is a drop-down menu that says, in mine it says full right now, because I'm viewing this at full resolution. Full audio resolution, full video resolution. If I change this down to like a quarter, that's going to change the resolution of the video on the screen and allow it to preview faster. It'll also downsample the audio too, I think. And you can't, and the thing is you really can't tell here. At the size that I'm looking at this, the fact that I dropped it down to quarter resolution, you can't even tell. But if you could, if you were looking at this at 100% of size, at quarter resolution, or even lower, you'd see this getting sort of soft. That's just the preview. It has nothing to do with the final render of the project. So I'm just going to set this back to fit. It's set now to a quarter resolution. And now if I play it from the beginning, oops, where'd my 30 go? 15, 3280 square. There we are. We've allowed to show 30. Now things are playing back in a way that I can really kind of tell what's going on. It'll probably still get a little glitchy somewhere, but it's a lot better than it was. I think you'll agree. So while we're working and previewing, things will get slow. They will get kind of choppy. Easiest way to fix that is simply to fit the video to the viewport and then drop the resolution on it down to like a quarter or so. You can't tell the difference working on screen, and when you render it, like I said, it won't affect the render at all. The render will always be at full resolution. So that's one of the first things that always trips people up for the most part. Same thing happens with After Effects when we get there, and there's the same kinds of things you can do. So, and that's the kind of thing that's much easier to show with a big file like this, because it'll actually behave the way I want it to not play right. So anyway, so that's, you know, a working file, all right? So what I want you to do is, along with me, I'm going to go to pexels.com, PEXELS.com, and we're going to download some video, a couple clips to work with. Grab some photos too if you want. We can also work with photos. Doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, a lot of times, even though you're doing video, you'll get tossed a handful of photos or a folder of photos that they want to make a video out of the photos for one purpose or another. I've got a project right now that's a mix of video and photos that have to kind of go together. They'll all be dropped into Premiere, and they'll all be worked on from here. So at Pexels, if we just here in the search bar, if we just search for videos, I don't know, pick a topic. Maybe it's, you know, cars or, you know, people. I don't know. Pick something to search for. And we will just, like, pick 2 or 3 videos you like. It's really all we need. And whenever you know, if you click on it, download the fullest version they've got, which will probably be the full HD. So download 3 or 4 videos, as large as you can get them, at least 1920 by 1080, because that's what we're going to do. All right? 1920 by 1080, download that. If I scroll down, and like I said, pick horizontal ones too. There's the other thing. When you're picking footage, when you're shooting your own footage, or if you're selecting from a stock source, know what it is you need to accomplish and pick footage that matches. So if you've got a project where you're going to do a social media video that needs to be a Facebook story format, you're not going to pick horizontal footage, right? Because Facebook story is vertical. You're going to want to pick vertical footage. So always know what it is you're working on and what you're pulling video for. We're going to do horizontal, so we're just going to focus on that. Kind of like that. Click on it. Some of these have, I mean, full HD is all you really need. Some of these have much larger versions. I personally think more is better, so I'll always get the biggest one that's available. So I'll grab the 4K here, download that. And let's see, then, so there's 2. That's kind of cool. So I've got this footage key going into a ignition. That could work out. Grab the full HD version of that, download it. So I got 3 pieces of footage, and all right, so I got 3 pieces of footage, and I'm going to go back and change from videos to photos, and then I'm just going to pick up, I just want to get 2 photos that go along with my theme. So I'll pick be careful on Pixabay not to try to grab photos from iStock or anything like that. Let's see. You know what? I'll grab this photo. Photos I always get as big as I can, because if it's just a still, we don't want to just place a still in a video, right? We want to be able to do some sort of a push or, you know, fade across it or something like that to give it the illusion of movement. So I'll always get the biggest photo that I can. So I'll download that and 1 more. When you're done, you should have 3 pieces of video, 2 pieces of two photos. And we'll download this one. What the heck? Again, biggest you can grab. All right. So you should have 5 assets when you're done there. And so now I'm just going to go, don't need that. I don't need any of that. So now I'm going to go to my Finder, and I'm just storing my stuff in my OneDrive, but go to digital media and create a new folder for Premiere, Demo 1. And then I'm going to create folders for photos and for video. All right. And then find wherever you find your downloads folder and just grab all of those. So I'm going to grab the 2 photos, drop them in my photos folder, my 3 pieces of video, and drag into my video folder. All right. So when you've got all your footage together, throw your hand in the air so I know who all has it, and I'll move on to, okay? You got yours? Three pieces of video, as large as you can get them. They should be at least HD, 1920 by 1080. We are generally not going to use stock video footage, except for maybe a supporting footage. We're going to shoot our own stuff, but we haven't even really tried to, learn how to edit anything together, and this is just the easiest and fastest way to do it, I think. This allows me to show you how to kind of cut stuff together and then take a photo and manipulate it a little bit. All right. Let me see hands for footage again. So while we're waiting on that, I mean, the reason I organize, on my desktop is I'll usually try to build out my Premiere file to match, if I can. Just kind of keeps everything together in one spot. Also makes it easier to back stuff up. So if you've got all your footage as well, and you got your folder set up, go ahead and also create a folder for renders. And we'll do a render before we're done here. Going to keep everything in its own place, just to keep things organized. All right. Can I move on? We all good? You good? Awesome. Kaya, you good? Yeah. All right. All right. So now we're going to open Premiere. Actually, let me close Premiere. All right. So now we're going to open Premiere. Adobe Premiere Pro 2025. And we're greeted with this window. Let's create a new project. So we're just going to go to the blue button here, click New Project, and give it a name. This is Day 1 Demo, or something like that. And then pick a place to put it. Under Premiere's dialog looks a little bit different than most of the Adobe stuff, so give it a name. Under Location, you want to choose a location. Put it the same place you put all of your footage. We're keeping everything together. So in my case, I'm going to my OneDrive, Spring 25, Digital Media, and Premiere Demo 1. And I'm going to select that. And we don't have to worry about templates. We're not working with templates. So do all that, say Create. And we'll see that on my desktop, there's my Premiere project right along with everything else. We're all organized. All right. So now we need to import our footage. So let's mirror so we can do this one of two ways. We can you can certainly drag and drop footage onto the interface, or we can click the Import Media button and it'll bring up the file picker, and the nice thing is that it'll go straight to the folder that our Premiere project's in. So you can either import things individually, or I could grab, I think I can grab all the folders. I don't want the renders. So if I grab my photos and my video folder only and import those, there we go. So now we've got all of our footage that we're going to work with in here. And we still can't do anything with it because we don't have a sequence. So we need to create what's called a sequence. So here in our project window, here at the very bottom, there's a few icons. So the little page right here, if I click on that, new item, I can select sequence, or I can go up to sequence, not sequence, I can go to quite honestly, I forget through the menu where you go to get a sequence, because I always do it from the first place I showed you. So we'll just do that. From here, we're going to create a sequence, and it's going to bring up this dialog. And now, we're going to just make, so there's a bunch of presets for it already. We're just going to look, I'm going to go under broadcast, let's go under HD, the second folder here. And we're just going to grab HD 1080p, 29.97 frames per second. So basically by selecting this, it's going to give us a 1920 by 1080 composition or video area at basically 30 frames a second. So for what we're going to do here, that'll work. 24 frames is usually, 24 frames per second also works. 24 frames per second is also better for social media video, to be honest, but we're going to go with 30 frames here, because I think the footage we've selected was probably 30 frames. So HD 1080, 29.97, and we'll just say okay. And oh, give it a name. So this is our first video, and we'll say okay. Which leaves us a timeline. Yeah. No, we're in Adobe Premiere, Premiere Pro. So we've got, so here's our first video sequence, and we can start building out in this. So if we take a look here at the side of it, there's this light gray line, thicker line that runs through the middle. That separates our video on the top half from our audio on the lower half, all right? And what'll happen is, if we have a soundtrack, for instance, a song we want to put in here, we'll drop it in and it'll go below that gray line. But if we drop video footage in that has audio with it, the video will be up here and the audio will be below the gray line. They'll be separate. So we can start tossing footage into our timeline here by going up under video, and I'm just going to grab the first one and drag it down here. And the first thing I get is a mismatch warning. So I probably picked 24 frames per second. Let's see. Oh yeah. Actually, 2 of the 3 I picked are 20. That's all right. We'll work with it. So when I get this warning, and if you got the same thing, it says this clip does not match the sequence's settings. It gives me the option to change the sequence to match the clip settings, or to keep the existing settings. We're going to keep the existing settings. And it'll interpolate that footage a little bit. It's best not to go up the way I just did. If our composition's 30 frames a second and our footage is only 24, we might get some jumpiness, but you can certainly go the other direction. Yeah? Says what? So what kind of issues? Okay. Moving along. So we've got our project window here, and I'm looking at a list. I notice some of you have larger icons, which is fine. It's just the view, which you can adjust from down here at the very bottom of the project window. So, all right. So I just picked one of my pieces of footage and I dropped it down here into my timeline. And it's a fairly small little clip. I mean, this timeline is actually over 9 minutes long, which is kind of long for what we're doing, but that's the way Premiere works. It makes an ultra long, like a 10-minute long timeline, basically. So you just need to zoom in to work on the area that you want to work on. So if I just, this gray bar here at the bottom, if I just click on that and drag it over, I can zoom in on the first part of my video. Grab that and move it to the front. And set this down. I wonder how big that footage is. That was my 280. Oh, this is my 4K footage. All right. So so the footage I put in here, if I double click on it up here in the project area, I can click on it and move it around. This is a really big piece of footage, so I need to resize it. And you may not have to do this step, but it depends on your footage. But within, and I am using the Essentials layout. Over here under Effect Controls, if I've got my footage selected, you see we've got position, scale, rotation, all those kinds of things. I can just scale my footage down or hit the little arrow next to it, scale it down to like 50%. And then slide it into place. So I've got one piece of footage in my timeline. However you've done it, as long as you got one piece of footage in there, that's what we're looking for. And if you play it, there's no audio with this, so it's just silent. But it'll play back. And this is a little over 6 seconds long. It's about 7 seconds long. So that'll be okay for right now. So now I'm going to put another piece of footage into it. So I've got, I'll go pick one of my other ones and drag it down. I'm going to drag it out here. So wherever my playhead is, this little blue thing right here, that basically tells me where I'm at in time. So if I slide this along to this piece of footage, basically that kind of shows me what footage I'm looking at that point in time. All right? And if I play this through, actually there is an audio track into this, but it's silent. I'm not quite sure what the point is of that, but that's the way it is. All right? So we have two pieces of footage in. Yeah? In order to put footage together, all we do is slide it together. And now we've got footage back to back. And I'm going to ignore this piece of audio down here, even though I want to get rid of it. But so in a very simple, basic way, this is all we do. And we can drop these in line together. So I could go grab my third piece of footage, drop it down here, See what that is? That's, I'm not sure how big that is, but it looks like it's a little too big. Oh no, that was right. And I can just slide that over. Now that piece of footage has some audio on it. But anyway, all we really need to do is put them together in that way. Is a base, I mean, very basically what we're doing, all right? So the thing is, most of the time, we're not going to want the full piece of footage. We're only going to want a part of it, a little section out of it. So here's how we do that, especially if we only want the video portion. So we can do one of two things here. We can either, like if I just put my playhead right here at the beginning and I just sort of pull it, drag it along, I can see what my footage looks like. So maybe I got this dark, let's see, I'm actually going to move my dark to the other end of my timeline. I'm going to pull my key in the ignition to the beginning. And then I'm going to put my Jeep video right up against it. So now at least, no, I kind of thought he might have started it. He didn't. Well, that's a little, that's a bit of a downer. Okay, so the key starts the vehicle and the vehicle drives away. That's my story so far. So let's say that I don't want, let's say I just want the action parts. So like where the key's going to go into the ignition, like I think from there to there might be good. And I'm just going to focus on video. I'm not going to mess with footage. So, or not mess with audio. So about right there is where I want this to start. And with my, if I go over here to my tools on the sidebar, with my selection tool, if I just hover over this end of the video footage, see the little bar turns red? If I click and drag, I can trim off the front, that first bit of footage. So now that's a black spot. So I can deal with that one of two ways. I can either grab this footage and slide it over, or if I just click right in this area, it turns white. And then if I tap delete on my keyboard, it pulls everything over after it. So whatever footage you have first, trim a little bit off the front. So you've got a black gap here. And the difference between the two ways that I can do this, if I just click and drag this over, the rest of the footage doesn't come with it. But if I click in that blank area, turn it white, and tap delete, it pulls all the other bits of footage along with it. So depends on what you're trying to do, which way you want to do it, but you know, deleting the space is one of the easier ones. So I adjusted that. This comes across. I really don't like the beeping noise. It's driving me nuts. So on my, and again, if you don't have an audio line, this won't bother, you won't have to worry about this, but I'm going to, right here on my audio, A1, which is where this is, there's an M. If I click on that, that'll mute that audio. I can also delete the audio, but we're just going to mute it for now. So let's see, that comes across, and maybe I want this to end right here. So I just want, stick it in, maybe to right there, something like that. So I can either click on this end of the footage and drag it across, or there's another way I can do this. So if I look at my tools here, look down through it, you'll see one about the fourth down that looks like a razor blade. It's called a razor tool. Back in the day when they actually worked with real film footage, not digital stuff, they used razor blades to cut stuff apart. So it's a razor blade. Select that razor blade. And if I come over here where my playhead is, or anywhere really, but this is where I decided I wanted my footage to end, if I just click with that razor tool, it cuts it in half. And then if I grab my select tool again, select that second half and delete it, I can delete that part. And then I got to go back in here and delete the space. So now I've shortened up, the key goes in, and then we're off. So I trimmed out unwanted portions of footage by pulling the ends in, and I also did the same thing by using the razor tool to clip the footage and delete the footage I didn't want. All right? Any questions about that so far? We good? Because we're going to do this a totally different way when we get to this piece of footage. Lots of ways to do lots of things, but they've all got purposes is the thing, all right? So I've got this, and this is going to be way too long. So maybe I actually want... See, I really don't want a piece out of here, and I can go back and do this, you know, the way I can go ahead and trim this up the way that I did it earlier. Actually, maybe I should leave it at that. There is another way to do it. I'll show you that next time. Well, let's get through editing this stuff together. So we got that. This one, edit this up however you want to edit it. So whatever footage you've got, just sort of scrub through it. Like, I'm thinking maybe, actually I kind of like all that piece, but maybe I want just from here to there. So using my razor blade, I'm just going to trim there, pull my playhead across to like there, and I'm going to trim that right there. Use my selection tool and delete the parts that I don't want. I don't want the very end, and I don't want this big long piece at the front. And then I'll just click in there and delete that. So I've gone from about, close to 30 seconds worth of footage. I've trimmed down to about 6 seconds. You're not always going to want all the footage in your clips. You're just going to want certain pieces. And then last but not least, we've got this. Or I could have done this too. Remember the photo I had you grab? Okay, I picked all of mine for a specific purpose, but you'll just have to work with whatever you've got, all right? It might make sense, it might not, I don't know. But I'm gonna go up here and grab, let's see, if I double click on that, I'd like to use that. I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna grab this photo and drag it down here right in line so that we got that and we've got this. And let's scale this down. I need to scale mine down a little bit here, so zoop. Something like that. And I'm just going to shorten that up. It doesn't need to be anywhere near that long. So across the beach, we shift gears into nighttime. I don't know. kind of hokey, but you get the idea. We're basically telling a story. I mean, the idea of video editing is we're telling a story using multiple pieces of footage, photos, whatever we need, all right? So I've done all of that, and we've got this footage. So I need to start thinking about length here for a moment, all right? I'm gonna create, and actually this isn't something you'll just make up after you've already started editing. You'll know how long your footage needs to be, your video needs to be before you start. But I need to think about how long I wanna make this. And like, this is kind of timing out right now to where I'm near 15 seconds, and that seems like a good time frame to me. So there are two keys on your keyboard, the I and the O key. I stands for in, O stands for out. And basically we're going to use those to I'm going to put my playhead back to the very beginning. Where I want my video to start is going to be my end point, my N point. So I'm going to tap the I key on my keyboard, and it places an end point. And then when I scrub across, and I'm looking at this little number right here. You see this time code at the bottom of my effect controls? Right now mine says 12.19 or 12 seconds, 19 tenths. I'm going to scrub across until I'm to 15 seconds. There we go. And when I get my playhead set right at 15 seconds, I'm going to hit the O key on my keyboard. And that's going to set my out point. So it starts at 0, ends at 15. It's going to be a 15-second long video. We can tell I've set my in and out points because in the numbers up here, top of our time code, it's turned gray. So that tells me how long my video is going to be. So I can, trim this in here so I know how long it's going to be. I can let it go longer too. Whenever I render it, it's only going to, stop. The render will stop at 15 seconds, the out point. But if I preview, it'll keep going if I have other footage out here. So I'm just going to kind of pull that in, and that's awful long. That's like 8.5 to 50, that's like 7 seconds long by itself, which is really kind of crazy. So I'm just going to trim this up a little bit. I'm going to go grab my other photo. Drop it in here. So here's an interesting thing. Whenever I go to drop my photo in here, it's longer than the space that I have. I want to just drop it on top of video 2. So instead of putting everything in line, I'm actually breaking this one up above so that I can trim this down to the length I want. And then I'll just drop it down in place. I kind of like to keep things linear like this if I can, but you're more than welcome to use video 2 and video 3. It's a layered system. Whatever's on top is going to hold precedence. So if I drag out my video, this photo of this Charger or Challenger, scrub across where it overlaps, it's still going to show the photo because that's the item that's on top. But I'm just going to trim this back to where I want it and drop it in place. So I've got my 15-second video here. My footage is still a little bit long, kind of boring, but I could go grab more footage if I want to. Actually, I'm going to go do that real fast. I want another piece of footage. Maybe I want video. And let's grab I'll download this one. Download that. Go back over here. I need to grab that footage I just downloaded, which is still downloading. Big. I'm doing this for a reason too. All right, so there's that. I'm going to drag this back over to my video folder, so it's again with everything else. But here's the thing, just because I drop it in this video folder doesn't mean that it's going to be in my Premiere projects pane. I still, even though I imported that entire folder originally, I've still got to import new footage one at a time. So I'm just going to right click, import, and there's my video, and it's the one that I just imported, this one. Just did. So there's that. I want to grab that video, drop it in where it belongs, and then let's take a look at what we got. I'll scale that down. Select that. And this is a real long piece of footage. I would never want all of that. But here's one kind of thing, here's one thing that's kind of nice. If I just put my playhead like right here in the middle, grab this and slide it along, that didn't work out as well as I wanted it to. I can just kind of scrub along, see what I got. I'm just going to trim this in. Pull it over. Yikes, that's really long. But you'll have that. So there's a third piece of footage there on the beach, starting that car. I'm going to shorten this piece, slug this in here, pull that back over to match. So we're just kind of pulling stuff around, moving things around. So now I've got starts, cutting to each of these, there, and I'm at the end. So whatever you've been doing as I've been working through here, if you're trying to follow along, that's cool. What you really just need to have is several pieces of footage, all kind of put together like this and trimmed. That's all we're trying to accomplish here. If it doesn't make any sense, that's all right. It doesn't really matter. Nothing we're going to keep necessarily. Well, we're going to hold on to it because we're going to go refer back to it later, but, you know. Also, save frequently. I have not saved yet. I need to save again. But I've kind of cut all of this together. So that's pretty cool. All right. Now, we need to do something with it, though. Actually, let's do this. Let's make this kind of complete. Let's run back over to, we got to go to a different website. Let's go to pixabay.com, and they have music. So this brings me up to my next point for this class. From this point forward, it's probably a good idea to have headphones or earbuds with you, because if we're doing little work with video in class and it's got audio, you probably don't want to listen to, it's probably distracting to listen to other people. So have your headphones, have your earbuds, that kind of thing. It's going to be sort of a standard thing. But Pixabay, I'm going to go to music. I don't know, we'll just look in here and see what we got. I can search. Let's look for something kind of rock-like. Well, that's not really rock, but that'll work. So I'm going to download that. Ignore the dialogues. And I'm going to drop that into my, did I make an audio? I did not make an audio folder. Need to make an audio folder. And we're going to drop Happy Rock into it. And then go back to our Premiere composition. And we're going to import that music. And I need to create an audio bin here too. So if you need to create a folder to organize stuff into inside of Premiere, it's called a bin. And it's this little icon right here, right next to the new item icon. Click on that, bin. This will be my audio. And I'll drop that in there. And now, so does anybody have a video sequence here that has an audio track on it already? You do? Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. So we don't want to use the audio track that you've got attached to your video footage. So make sure those are all in a line, like I've got mine here, and just mute that audio channel. Bless you. The little green, the little M right here, if you, next to the audio, if you click on that and turn it green, it'll mute it, so you don't hear it. All right. You good? All right. Last thing, we're almost done. I swear to God. Promise we are. And I feel like I'm doing, because usually I throw much more than this into this initial demo and it like blows everybody out of the water. So I'm keeping it simple and I'm happy with myself, just so you know. All right, so last but not least, I want to grab this audio track and drag it down here onto my audio layer. And you'll see that it's really long, and I don't care for right now. We're not going to worry about it, all right? I am going to take the time to trim this in. But if I wanted this whole thing to finish out in a nice way, like the music ends nice, what I could do, now we'll leave it like this. I'm just going to trim the audio down to match the length of my video. So now, when I play, ends kind of abruptly, but that's for another day. What's that? Yeah. Yep. But it's really just a matter of, selecting all your footage. I mean, And I'm just doing this on the fly too, you know? It's like I'm not really paying a lot of attention to details. I mean, when you build a video out, you're gonna select your footage, you're gonna plan it out, kind of storyboard out what you want it to do, and have a plan when you start. You'll have your music, you'll have, you know, I mean, all I'm doing is slugging a piece of music to some video, and I'm not even timing anything. There's a whole timing aspect to this. I'm just kind of trying to keep it, you know, keep it simple and keep it rolling for this first time through, so we can at least get the basics of cutting and putting stuff together. So do we have a piece of music with our footage at about roughly 15 seconds long? Well, or something. Did you do the in and out points like I did? You should probably pick how long you want it to be, because otherwise it's going to render an entire 9-minute long. You got to put in and out points. Otherwise it's going to try to render out a 9-minute long video that's not going to be 9 minutes. You need to see how to do the in and out point thing again. Within your composition, within your sequence, you've got to have in and out points to establish the length of the rendered out video. Everything happens in between the in and out points. And when it gets tricky is when you need to end the music, you know, at the out point. Now you got to do a little more work, but. Yeah. Pixels doesn't have music. You got to go to Pixabay. Pixabay, Pixabay. That's the site I went to. Pixabay.com. There is, just so you know, under content on Brightspace, where did I put it? Oh, online content resources, links to places you can go for different stuff. So we're generally not gonna, though, I mean, you could pick music from Pixabay if you want, but actually, whenever we do this, do our projects in here with Premiere, we're actually gonna get Adobe Sound. We actually have a free, we can use the Adobe Sound collection, which is much better. But so at this stage, all that's important is that you've strung some pieces of video together. You got your in and your out point set. 10, 15 seconds, somewhere in there would be fine. I mean, it doesn't have to be 15. It, you know, we're being kind of loose with this. It doesn't matter. As long as you have a defined out point. So make it 10, you know, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds is good. Because whenever we render it, we want for Premiere to know when to stop rendering. You know, that's why we need the out point. And last but not least, if you're sort of where I'm at, roughly, we're going to render it. And there's 2 different ways to render. So, and reasons we would use each one. So we've done all of this, got our footage. So up here at the very top, where we've got the little home button, we're working under Edit. There's an Export button. And this is where we'll render from. So we can either render straight out of Adobe Premiere, or we can send it to Adobe Media Encoder and let Media Encoder handle it. And there's reasons we would do each one. One is, if it's a very short video, there's not much to it, like what we've done here, this isn't much. We could just render straight out of Premiere, and it's nice and simple that way. But if it's a very long video and you've put effects in it and you've got, you know, maybe you got music, but you've also got some sound effects and a dialogue, and you've got graphics imported from After Effects, the renders can get really long. The problem with rendering out of Premiere, directly out of Premiere is while it's rendering, you can't do anything else. So while that's good, if that gives you 30 minutes to leave and go get a drink or dinner or a beer or whatever, you know, great. But most of the time, we still want to be able to keep working. We're only rendering to see what we've got. So in that case, we would actually send it to Media Encoder because it's a separate app. It'll render, and we can go back to Premiere and we can do our work. So that's the difference between the two. This one, I'm just going to do straight out of Premiere. I'm not going to worry about going to Media Encoder for this. So up here in our export menu, give it a file name. I'm just going to call it my first video. It's going to be an MP4. That's what it's going to render. Pick where you want it to go, this location. The blue type is actually a button. You click on it, you wait on it, and you find, I'm going to go back to where I'm, back to my project folder. Remember the renders folder that I made? I'm going to put it right there. Put it wherever you want, but the renders folder is convenient. So I'll save that there. And I'm just going to leave everything else alone. One of the other things that's really nice about rendering out of Premiere is that if you've got your own, which you should or will, if you've got your own YouTube channel, Vimeo channel, when you render, as long as you put your credentials into it, it'll render and upload directly to your social media channel. It'll process there, and it's kind of a hands-off kind of a deal. You don't have to worry about doing the upload yourself. It's kind of convenient. It does actually work. It just takes a little bit of time, which is a little bit of a drag, but you can do that if you want. We're not going to bother with that. Saving it, come down here, and so here's where you make the choice of sending a media encoder or exporting straight out of Premiere. I'm just going to do the blue export button, and that'll render right out of Premiere. So if you click on that, it'll encode my first video, and voila, it'll tell me in a nice little blue box down here in the corner when it's done. And if I go back over to my project folder and I look at my renders and I open this up with QuickTime, there's my movie, my video. That's the end. Woo-hoo. So whatever you've got, make sure, render it so that you know how to render it, all right? Kind of want to run through that whole kind of process. We'll do that plenty more times. If you didn't catch it this whole time through, we'll do it again. But that's what I wanted to accomplish. I know it's kind of a lot too. Any questions? Like I said, we'll do this again. There's not a ton of tools in Adobe Premiere, but there are some really pretty decent ones, some pretty nice ones. I didn't even use the type tool or the shape tool, so, But save this project with all of your assets. Now that I've kind of gone through all of this, if you followed along with me, cool, that's good. But I would like for you to have at least some small video snippet rendered out before you leave here today. All right? So whatever you've done, just sort of tweak it up, clean it up, drop a little bit of music to it. I'll walk around, and if you have any questions or any issues, ask. But, it doesn't have to be much. Super simple. I just want you to go all the way through the process one time. And we'll worry about making things that make more sense the next time we jump into this, all right? See that? So, very simple, basic cutting stuff together. There are much more specific ways to do this as well with footage.